I don't know. It sounds right. Hello, people. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, you are on camera acting like fools. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay. I'm calling the meeting to order at 5:01. We'll erase the other part before that. Okay, Danae? She gave me the look. Let me just go. Let me go over our purpose and outcomes for tonight. So we are switching pilots. This is our switch day. So you should have turned in your first pilot, and now you are getting open up resources for your second pilot of 20 instructional days. We have Nicole Mercurio. Oh, I said it right. Okay. We have Nicole with us from Open Up, and she is going to be training you on the Open Up resources with illustrative mathematics, and I'm going to turn it over to her. Again, hold your questions until she gives you a break to be asking those questions. I do think one of my ladies over here, we probably need to get sticky notes in case people have questions and they can write them down and then be able to ask them. I encourage you to get your laptops out because I think Nicole's going to transition back and forth between the print materials and the electronic platform. So without further ado, I'm turning it over to Nicole.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Mercurio, and I live in Tempe, Arizona, and I work in the TD3 Elementary School District, and I also work for Open Up Resources. So with Open Up Resources, I'm a community coach, and I do some of the teacher, leader, and residence work. So that's where we go to school districts or to schools and provide professional development. And then in Tempe, I was a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math teacher, and now I am a math coach for my district. So right here in Arizona, and I'm sure I'm right with you guys, it's the end of the school year. I'm there too. Does this work?
I'm just going to help you because I think it's funky. How about you click the slide?
I can go stand over there. It was working. Here's our agenda for tonight. So we'll go over what Open Up Resources are and what we're about. We'll go over the scope and sequence within the resources, the unit level resources, then the lesson level supports, the activities, and all the instructional routines that you'll see within the curriculum, and then the assessments, and then the course guide. And if you're interested, we have a bunch of OUR communities on Twitter and Facebook and all over the place to provide support. Okay, so introductions. I told you a little bit about myself, but I've been using Open Up Resources for 7 years now, and I've used it in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and I use the high school curriculum when I taught Algebra 1 as well. I don't have any experience using the K-5 curriculum, but I did create slides for 3rd grade. So that's my experience, but they're very similar. And throughout this, I don't know, I clicked it and it moved. I don't know if it was her or me. That's what I thought. So I'm here to give you all that overview, and then I'll give you my personal experience too, using it throughout different grade levels. And if you have questions, I am more than happy to answer any of them. Okay, who Open Up Resources is. So they are a nonprofit organization, and they're on a mission to increase equity for education and ensure that every student in every classroom, wherever they are, get the same joyful education and receive a quality education in mathematics. And we do this by providing excellent curricula for free and supported with districts through implementation, through whatever professional development that district needs. And all of the resources through Open Up are completely free. And that is one thing that I love about this. You can go online, print anything you need, and people provide their additional supports that they have, and they have that on the website all for free. It is a great resource for any teacher. So the two primary objectives are to support schools and districts the way that they deserve to be supported, So not just a blanketed professional development, it's really catered to what that district needs and how many days they need, what supports teachers need, what supports schools might need, and it might vary school to school within the district. So it's really catered to what is needed for that school. And then to increase education equity by making high quality curricular accessible to all teachers and students, and then providing those supports within the lessons so that that high quality curricula could be accessible to students. This is a core belief of the organization that all students are capable learners of mathematics, and that all students are capable of like high cognitively demanding tasks and high curricular for mathematics. So all students, each with unique knowledge and needs, enter the mathematics learning community as capable learners of meaningful mathematics. Mathematics instruction that supports students in viewing themselves as capable and competent must leverage and build on the funds of knowledge and the schema that they have, that they bring to the classroom already. So really trying to incorporate different backgrounds and the backgrounds of all of the students that could be using this curricula. Okay, so now we're gonna get into the scope and sequence of the different grade level materials. So I am used to just looking at the 6 through 8 scope and sequence and what this is, but this also incorporates the 3rd grade, 5th grade, and how they're interchangeable between them. So in here, there's a couple different colors. So if you are looking at the top and it says 3.1, that's 3rd grade unit 1, all the way to unit 8 for the whole school year. The green arrows are, so if I'm looking at 3.2, I see a green arrow go to 3.7 or unit 7. So whatever skills are taught in unit 2 are dependent in unit 7 builds off of them. So it shows within the grade level vertical what foundational skills you then see later on in upcoming units. Then those like light blue, gray arrows that you see from like 3.2 to 4.1, if you're a 4th grade teacher and you're in unit 1 and you want to know what previous skills in the grade level before are building off of that, I could look at this and go look at 3rd grade unit 2, and whatever unit that is, those skills are needed as prerequisites for unit 1 in 4th grade. So it shows that. And then the black lines show between like elementary school to middle school, which units are dependent on each other. So if I am a 6th grade teacher in unit 1, which is area and surface area, I know that it is dependent in 3rd grade unit 2. And then whatever's in unit 1 in 5th grade also builds off of those skills. Any questions on the unit dependency chart or how to read it?
Nicole, this is also available for kinder, 1st, and 2nd too.
Yes. This was great. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade and kinder 1, 2 was just added this year. So as a middle school teacher and supporting teachers in middle school, we looked at this in our PLCs and we're like, okay, in 6th grade, what units can we go back and look at to see what we need to, maybe prerequisite skills or things like that. So this was really helpful in our planning aspects in PLCs. Okay, we are going to look at 3 different things or 3 different aspects of this curriculum that we can use. So one is the teacher's edition, which we all have in front of us, and then one is the student edition, which we all have. And if you don't have that, you can access it on openupresources.org. If you want to follow along online, you can do that as well. I know I have that bookmarked in my computer because I'm on it every single day. So those are the 3 ways that we're going to access this curriculum. And just to make it more cohesive, we're going to do it on 3rd grade, and then I'll go over how it's different in the middle grades because it's a little different just in a few places. The overarching design structure in elementary and in middle school starts with the invitation to mathematics. So the first couple lessons are really inviting, they're hands-on, and then it's a deep study of concepts and procedures, and then at the end of a unit it's consolidating and applying all of those that we've learned. It starts conceptual and it builds to that procedural aspect of it, and then it has culminating lessons at the end of each unit. At the unit level, the first couple lessons are introductory lessons to an example would be in 6th grade, the first couple lessons for Unit 1 is on area of a triangle and parallelograms. So it starts with very conceptual understanding of what does area mean and things like that. And then it gets into the instructional lessons midway through that unit. And then at the end, it has all those culminating lessons to put all the pieces together. So for a unit overview, which is what we're going to get into, if you have your computer, you can follow along with this. I'm going to do it in the terms of 3rd grade. So you go to openupresources.org, and then you would click 3rd grade, and you would click that you're a teacher. Know that when you create this, which most of you have, they do verify that you're a teacher so that students can't just go on and say they're a teacher and get access to all of this. That was a question I had when I first started using this. They do verify it. So then once you click on the teacher, you go to explore, and then it has all the units there. We'll start with Unit 1 in 3rd grade, which is Introduction to Multiplication. And then in there, you click that unit overview. And in there, it kind of tells you the concepts in the order that they're going in. And then it tells you possibly in the previous grade level what it's building on. It tells you the different sections that are within it. So you'll see in the K-5 curriculum, it's broken up into like Section A, Section B, Section C, and the lessons within that. Each section is addressing different aspects of whatever standards those are. In the 6th through 8 curriculum, we do not have sections. So it's just Unit 1. You would read that overview, and then it just has every lesson. It's broken down into like chunks, but not necessarily sections like this. And then in the teacher's edition, if you have that, it is also there. Whatever it says online is also in the teacher's edition. Just if you like to write in your teacher's guide, that's when I would use those. Okay. So here's what it looks like on the left online, and then on the right is what it would look like in your teacher's edition. And then it talks about everything that is in that unit and what is from the grade level prior.
Nicole, I'm back here now. We are not writing in the teacher's edition, so you can use sticky notes in the teacher's edition, but you will be turning your teacher's edition back in. Okay? A difference in the 6th through 8th curriculum is that it does break down new terminology, and it goes through the progression of the disciplinary language. So this is 7th grade, and in 7th grade, the first unit is on scale factor. And so it goes over all of the receptive vocabulary. So in the first lesson, it talks about a scaled copy. And if it's bolded like that, that means it's in the glossary for that lesson. But this was extremely helpful for me when I was going over vocab. If it was receptive, that just means that they were supposed to understand it when you're speaking it, as opposed to when it's supposed to be productive. So when you should hear them saying it within your lessons. My first year using this, I did not know about this resource, and someone showed it to me. They were like, "What is this?" And then I looked at it, and it was extremely helpful in my lesson planning. So that is a great resource to use and to
bring up in PLCs or planning times, and just to know like what language demand we're expecting of our students. And then within those, we'll get into it later, they have supports for vocabulary and ELL students embedded within the curriculum. Okay, so here is a section overview. In this section, if you click on section A, it'll go through what is expected of the student in those lessons 1 through whatever it is. In this case, it's 1 through 8, what's expected of them. And normally at the bottom of it, it'll have pictures of diagrams that pictures of diagrams that they'll see a lot throughout those lessons. In here, it will also have at the bottom some practice problems that you can vary within the lessons. In the 6 through 8 curriculum, they have practice problems for every single lesson. They're at the bottom of it. I will tell you, dependent on whatever your math class time frame is or how long your class is, depends on if you get to the practice problems or not. It's not expected to get to them at every lesson, but they are there to support. And in the 6-8 curriculum, it has a spiral review. So the first 3 are based on the lesson that day, and then the ones after that are from previous units to spiral review. So if you have the teacher's edition, this is what it would look like. It goes over what the students are expected. And then each unit also has, in K-5 and 6-8, each lesson, what standards it is addressing, what standards it's building off of on the previous grade level or previous learning. And then it has which ones you're building towards, which I have noticed before, and I think it has it on here. The addressing and building towards sometimes have the same standard because it might be the first lesson you're addressing that standard. So you're building towards the mastery of that standard later. Any questions on the section overviews?
I'm going to push pause. Do you want a second to look at what she has just presented and see if you can find it on the electronic platform as well as in your TE? Or you want her to keep going? Keep going? Okay, okay.
Okay. Next, we'll go into the unit downloads. So in each unit, I'm going to go back to here. In each unit, you'll see up here, it says unit downloads off to the right. That's for the K-5, and the K-6 is on the left side underneath it. And then in there, you can print off PDF versions of every single cool down or exit ticket. You can print off any assessment. You can print off all the practice problems. And then it also has all the Blackline Masters. Yep.
Erica, I think we're getting them all access, right, to the assessments? Okay. We had to send your email individually.
Okay. The Blackline Masters, you can print off all of them for the unit beforehand. I will say my first year using this, I would print off all of them beforehand because it was easier for my prep work, because if you're a K-5 teacher, there's centers, and then there's activity boards within lessons. And then in the middle school curriculum, it has a lot of card sorts. There's something called an info gap that we'll get into that requires pre-printing before the lessons. But those can all be printed and then laminated, or however you organize your materials in your class. This is what I printed. I made binders for each unit when I did this, and I printed off this Blackline Master. It saved me so much prep time. So it has all the Blackline Masters for the unit, and then the title of it, what lesson it comes up in, and the activity number. And then it tells you students per copy. Is it written on? If it is written on, each person needs their own, and you got to do it again next year. If it's not written on, I laminated it. Does it require cutting? Should you put it on stock or colored paper? That's just like a teacher planning prep time, but it was really helpful. So I printed those off before each unit. Any questions on how to access or find the unit downloads? Okay. Went through the design structure. So that was the unit level resources and where to access them. So online, you click the unit, has the overview. You can also click the download, and it shows you every PDF that you can download for that unit. Next, we're going to get into the lesson by lesson level supports and what those look like. So each lesson is structured with familiarity for the students. So each lesson has a warm-up, it has a synthesis, it has classroom activities, and then a synthesis to that. It has a lesson synthesis and then a cool down. The K through 5 lessons are built for a 60-minute class time, where the middle school, so the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade units, are built for a 45 to 50-minute class period. If you need to stretch it longer, there's the practice problems, there's other supports in there that you can add on to it. But I have taught middle school for 90 minutes, and I made the curriculum work with practice problems and centers, and I've also taught this curriculum right now at the school I'm at for 45 minutes. You definitely have to be on top of timekeeping, but you can make it work in 45 minutes. So the lesson preparation in here, you click on the lesson. Off to the left side right there, it has all the contents for the online platform, and you can click to which lesson you want to go to within the unit. Within there as well, I think it has the paper, good. If you want to quickly look at what the cool down is for that lesson, you can just click to that and it'll bring you right there. It also has the learning goals and the student-facing learning goals for teachers for the preparation. It has, there it is, the lesson narrative and the lesson purpose within it. So the purpose tells you what you want your students to get out of it for that lesson, and then the narrative is how it is portraying that throughout the lesson. So what concepts are they building on, or are they building towards within that lesson? And then in the K-5 curriculum, it has something called Math Community, where they just build math norms of what mathematical thinkers and mathematicians do and look like and sound like and act like. That's not in the 6-8 curriculum, it's just in the K-5. Any questions on the difference between the purpose, the narrative, or how to access the lesson preparation portion?
Where does the workbook come in? So all this, like, you have the black line masters and everything. Sorry. Hi. I'm trying to look to see where the actual workbook comes into everything.
Okay. I've used the workbook a few different ways. I've used the workbook for students to look at, and then they write in their notes. I don't know, are students using this one-to-one? They are? Perfect.
For our younger grades, K2, Oh, thank you. For the younger grades, K2, they have individual student workbooks.
That's
The
great.
one-to-one, yes.
Okay. If you're using them one-to-one, the students, so this is just what the lesson looks like on the teacher aspect, and then the workbook. So if you're doing lesson 1, the students would turn to that page and they can write right in this book. It's like a math textbook. The Blackline Masters are not in there. So this is like your teacher guide, and then those are what's in front of the students. But you will see in the teacher guide exactly what the students will see, and then it has like anticipated responses, misconceptions, and it has answer keys, and then it has questions to prompt your students as well. And I think we get into all those supports in a moment. But the Blackline Masters are not included in the workbooks, so you do need to print those off and make the copies. The cool downs, oh, sorry. She asked if the cool downs were in the Blackline Masters. The cool downs are not. You would have to print those off. So if you go to the unit downloads, it has the cool downs and you can print them off for the unit. Yes.
You also don't have to print the cool downs. Some of the cool downs are slides, right? Where it is an application question that you are asking students, and maybe they're doing it on a piece of paper and turning it into you. So you don't have to print the cool downs if you don't want to.
Like I do know in 6th grade, Unit 1, the first lesson, I remember the cool down, it was like, what is area? So you could just have that and the students write it down in their journals. Or however you do that in your classroom.
Most of them are a know and do. Most of the cool downs.
So in the lesson preparation, it will have the learning goals, lesson purpose and narrative, the instructional routines, which we'll get into what those are, the materials needed for each lesson or for each activity within that lesson, the downloads, the standards that it's building on, building towards, addressing, the lesson timeline, and if you're K-5, it will have a suggested center with it, dependent on which grade level, because the centers, which we'll get to towards the end, if it's for the week for the center, if it's for the day, or how often you will use them. Yes.
So when you said that the centers were K-5, is there anything to do small group instruction with for our 6-8 teachers?
Provided from this, no. I do use the pre-unit diagnostic. So that tells me it's a readiness assessment pretty much. Do they have the prerequisite skills to access the grade level material? And then it tells you which standards specifically it's addressing. So then there's resources that I'll show you towards the end that teachers have submitted, or it's coming up with some on your own. So here are more of the lesson preparation and what you can do. For the PDFs, for each lesson online, it has the cool down if you don't want to do the unit download for the cool downs. And then it has each activity and what it would need for it. If you are not using the books one-to-one, you can go to this printable PDFs and you go to the student lesson, and it has exactly what's in the book for the student books. It has that printable for the students, if that is how you want to use it and not use the workbooks. If you have access to the workbooks, I would suggest using those. It saves you a lot of preparation and a lot of paper. Then each lesson, which is my absolute favorite part about this, already has Google Slides made for it. So every single lesson, K-5 and 6-8, and if you're doing Algebra 1, I used those slides as well, has slides already made by teachers, for teachers. I made the 3rd grade slides for this curriculum, and then I've used 6th, 7th, 8th in Algebra 1, and they are a huge time saver. So they match directly with each lesson. And you just click on the Google Slides in K-5. In the 6th, 8, it's not going to say Google Slides down here. It's going to say community created resources and bring you to Google Sheets, I think. And then on there, it has not just Google Slides, it has a bunch of other resources also that teachers have made. So if you use like Desmos or Pear Deck or Nearpod, what are some other ones? I think Edpuzzles are in there as well. So it already has resources that other teachers have made and have been vetted by the people that work at Open Up Resources. The only thing to edit them, you just have to make a copy. And if you do, organize them, because I've made copies every single year, and I think I have like 20 copies of the same lesson, because I just make a copy every year. There we go. So this is what I was talking about when it's editable and customizable Google Slides. So this is a 7th grade lesson on the scale factor. And those were made by Morgan Stipe. She made the 7th grade ones. And then on there, make a copy. And then it has the applets. If you're using those, it has those linked within them. And then, there it is. It'll have on the bottom of the slides, it's not on there, it says the activity synthesis and questions and prompts you can ask students on the bottom of the slides. I know when I taught this lesson, to edit this, we somehow formatted it for, instead of using, I think his name's Diego, we put our principal's face on there for the scaled copy, and he loved that. Okay, so here is a typical lesson structure. This is from lesson, when it says 3.14, that's 3rd grade unit 1 lesson 4. And if it had a .1 after it, that'd be activity 1. So 3rd grade unit 1 lesson 4, and then if it had a .1, that'd be activity 1. So here's the warm-up. You're supposed to flash it for 30 seconds and ask the students how many dots do you see and have them explain and go through that routine. And then there's a warm-up synthesis. And then it'll go into the activities. So here's the first activity within that lesson. And then after completing, this would be what the students see on the slides, and then they're working in their workbooks. And then after that, in the teacher's edition book, it'll have an activity synthesis to go through. And in there, it has like question prompts to ask the students, or maybe it's a gallery walk of them looking around and looking at the students' works. It'll tell you what lesson synthesis you're using for that. Okay. Next is the lesson synthesis. So each lesson has the warm-up, you synthesize the warm-up, the activity, synthesize the activity, and then it'll tell you how much time for each of them, synthesize the learning for the whole day, and then you go into the cool down. And it is built into the structure for K-5 for 60 minutes, and then the 6-8 for 45 to 50 minutes. So it tells you what to display, which was this last display the bar graph from today, ask the students this question, ask them the next question, and then that would be your synthesis for the day for that lesson. And then you would get into the cool down for the students. Any questions on the structure of that? Okay, 6-8 is structured very similar. Warm up, synthesis, activity. It could be 2 activities, 3 activities, however many is for that day, the synthesis, and then the cool down. The Algebra 1 curriculum follows the same process. It just uses a little bit different terminology. Instead of a warm up, they call it a jump start. Here are what the practice problems look like. And for this, in the K-5, it's broken down by section. And let me go back. In the 6-8, it's broken down by specific lesson. And then it does have that spiral review in it. If you're doing Algebra 1, it's called a Ready, Set, Go. It's not practice problems. So it is called something a little bit different. And then the practice problems are not built into the time frame of the 60 minutes and the 45 to 50 minutes. So me personally, when I taught for 45 minutes in a middle school math classroom, I typically did not get to the practice problems. I would assign them as, I would use them as review. I would use them as bell work sometimes. I would use them if I got done. I would use them, or I would assign them as homework. Those are the different ways I've used them. Or if it's a spiral review one, I would use it in my small group reteaches or my small group extensions. That's how I use them. I typically, in 45 minutes, which was what my class period was, did not get to the practice problems. But I still utilize them just differently. In the K-5 curriculum, there's something called the exploration practice problems, which is just to get students thinking and engaged in math in a different way, more conceptual and more hands-on way before they go into that unit. So if you're in Unit 2, it'll have something called exploration practice problems that your students can explore before they go into Unit 2, kind of to get them to start thinking in that different way we want them to before exposing them to the grade level content.
The exploration practice problems in K through 5, is that for every lesson that those will be there, or some lessons?
It'll be for every unit.
Every unit.
Yes.
Thank you.
So not exactly every lesson, just the unit. Do you need time to explore the practice problems online or in the workbooks? I do know that the 6th through 8th grade, every single practice problem for every lesson is on Desmos. So I would assign them in Google Classroom through Desmos to my students in middle school. I'm not sure about K-5. 6-8, I don't know about Algebra 1. And I feel bad, I forget who created them, but it's a lady and she created them for every single lesson, every single unit. In every lesson, there's an Are You Ready for More? And it is supposed to take that student's thinking for that day and extend it further. So really getting to that more in-depth knowledge of that and critical thinking. This doesn't mean every single student needs to do the Are You Ready for More? It's more for like your early finishers, or if you have some extra time in the class to explore, you can do the Are You Ready for More? Sometimes I used them as like the challenge of the week or other creative ways than using it in my lesson, because I would say like 50% of the time I would get to the Are You Ready for More? So I didn't use every single one of them. And if I wanted to use it because I really liked the question and I knew it would get my students thinking, I would use it in a different way as like a challenge problem. So it's not expected you get to those. It's just there if you need it. And if your students need some more, they finish early or they want more work. And for those, it also has the student responses that you'll see. I forgot to say, those are incorporated in every Google slide, and they should be in all of your workbooks as well. So another support that's in lesson by lesson is the Access for English Learners. And I have found this to be beneficial for all of my students, not just my English learners in my classroom. It'll say what the students or what it is supporting, so representing and speaking. And then it will say like MLR, so that's Math Language Routine 8, and that's discussion supports. So then it'll talk about where they might need support. So in here, students, when they're comparing graphs, display this following sentence frame to help them. So you don't have to come up with those on your own. Those are all created and embedded within the lessons. I will say I used them for every single lesson. Even if it was off to the side and it said you could use this, I still used it for every lesson because I found it valuable to get that math vocabulary and academic vocabulary out of my students that we want. If it was there for me, I put it in my slides or I made sure that we used them. And I found that very beneficial. Here's where it will be in your teacher's edition or if you're online. So it'll have, this is for activity 2. It says what standard, and it says the purpose and what the students are doing. And then it has the Access for English Learners. And then down here is where it says the instructional routine that you're using. It also has the Access for Students with Disabilities, which we'll get into after this. So I just used the term math language routines or MLRs is what we call them for short. And there's 8 of them. And they are very helpful for support with vocabulary and for math language. So the first one is stronger and clearer each time, which essentially, I love the math language routines. So stronger and clearer each time means that they have a chance to write to a prompt of something. And they read it to themselves, and then they stand up and they go find a partner. It's like a rough draft, and then you share with your partner what you wrote, and then you come back and you either restate what you wrote, add on to it, or change whatever you had written. That's essentially stronger and clearer each time, and you can go through that rotation as many times as it says to, or as many times as you feel they need. Collect and display is pretty similar to an anchor chart, but it's like a in real time anchor chart. So as we're all talking, we're copying them down onto the whiteboard or onto a poster board. MLR3, clarify, critique, and correct. Similar to stronger and clearer each time, you ask students to clarify, they critique each other's work at the table, and then they correct it. It goes more in depth in the course guide that I'll show you. Information gap. This one was my favorite in the middle schools. So you're given a problem card and a data card, and then the person who has the problem card has to read it, and they have to ask questions to their partner of what information they need to solve the problem, because it doesn't give them everything. So they have to synthesize what the problem is, what information do I need to solve it, and ask questions. And then the person who has the data card can only say yes or no. And then if they say yes, they can say whatever number they have on their card until they get to the answer. And then you normally switch and there's a second problem. That took a lot of modeling to do in middle school, but it was one of my favorite math language routines. co-crafting questions is you'll put up a math problem or you'll put up a story problem without the question, and then you'll have students come up with their own math questions to it. That's just the high ceiling, low floor entry point for students to access that material and get them to just start thinking about it and to feel that they're heard. The 3 reads is the first read you do without them having it in front of them, and then they just have to tell you what the problem's about. The second read, you read with the purpose of what is this question, or what are we being asked to solve? What are we being asked to do? And then the third read is students identify any necessary information and numbers within the problem. And then you normally solve this in groups after. That one, if it's new, which it was for my classrooms, took a lot of modeling as well, but it was beneficial to students once they started to internalize that process. And then discussion supports, language frames, it's just helping the students with either verbalizing or with their written responses. And compare and connect is comparing different aspects of the lesson and connecting them, and that's normally the teacher making those connections visible for the students. So those are the math language routines, and those are the ones that you'll see under the ELL support. Any questions on those? I know there's a lot of them. I know.
Is there a place where you can go and look at all of those routines so that you are prepared for when it comes to modeling it and get better at it every time we do it?
Yes. That's not it. It does come up later. It's in the course guide. So online, if you go over to the course guide, go to how to use these materials and about these materials, it's on the left side. It'll have it, and you scroll down, and it has every math language routine, where you see it, when it comes up, and how to use it.
So you click on resources, and then there's a drop down for course guide.
Do you want a minute to explore that? Yeah, okay.
Did everyone locate it?
So do I have?
Is there any way for me to open these when it's not a PowerPoint thing? Is there any way for me to open these? Like this one's a PDF, but none of the other ones.
So basically, when you click on the download, you can just upload it into your Google Drive. So now if you go to your Drive, and open up the folder you want to put it in.
Okay, but I need to go through, like this is, you know, how many years I've been using this book, like I've been working here. Let's go to my folders. I have folders with and I need, I want it, but clearly I can't.
Yeah, right there. So the first one you do think fair share. Then
So if I were to put them in here, if I go to file upload,
and then in the entrance fees, so activity 2, it has the 3 reads and the think fair share. Then down here, it'll explain how to use the 3 reads right there.
High Masters. And then you guys, what I would you guys like to do is also my license is invisible. Let me go grab it. We saw it, remember when we, okay.
So which one doesn't go on? So it'll tell you which one of them. But if you want the like how to, I think it's not gonna be. You guys need any help finding anything?
There's content and pedagogy in this book. I like the principle.
The algebra and the eighth grade, shortest
I mean, we're missing a lot of people today. Social studies.
very different than the others. Which is very similar to our
It's not called 5
From me?
It's called anticipated.
Oh, because I took your name off.
Yes, where can we find the, are you ready for more?
I need to put it in the.
I opened one example of the grade, I mean, blue slides. I don't see. Are you ready for more?
Okay.
So where can we find it?
Here, try this.
So if you're in the lessons here, not every lesson has an Are You Ready for More? So find one that has one, and then we'll see if we can get on the.
So it's on the student
Yes,
with a specific.
it's on both.
It might have been within another unit. That's probably why it wasn't under the same
It'll be
title.
in
So
both.
that's why. I can't remember what it was.
The pre-unit explorations. Where is this?
So in here,
So like the thing that I've seen with a lot of them is they give you a ton of things, but I look through it and I'm like, I might only want to do 2 of them because I know my kids and what they can get them.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing too. We were talking about the activities. Okay, maybe activity 3 is 25 minutes. Maybe one activity
those are
1
just
versus
practice
activity
problems.
2, or
So maybe not every unit has
use your
them, and I
future brain and
misspoke
combine whatever makes it
because
work. Because
I did see
60-minute block is what we have, but it's tight when we're not an oil machine.
What I've noticed so too about it is that when
what they say.
it
There's
gives
some
you 10
right
there it
activities,
is.
Yeah, there's
So
some
it's
it really, I can
incorporated
skip, I can do
those are
one and not,
so it's not
and do
separate.
4 and that's it, and they're still gonna get the content that they need. It's really, because remember she said this is all teacher built. So these are things that teachers have built that like, oh, I did it this way, or oh, and they put them all in there to give you access to.
Yeah, and I
but
like
you don't
how
have to
it's
create it
more
because it's already
for some sample responses, right? That your kids may say.
I know,
And then there
maybe
should be
I know it's a lot when you look at it. And
every
But
lesson
it
to
could
look through that
possibly,
many and
because
then decide
this
which
unit
one.
is on fractions, right?
well, something like the black
Oh,
tie
this is your
method or
TV,
5
right?
frame,
It's like
Yeah.
what
a
it's
10 frame.
going
We've
through
got that
TS.
stuff. Or
So
it was the
it's
5 frame with
Totally.
for the
answer
upcoming,
1,
If
2, 3.
students fill in both equations, consider asking, how did you find the number that makes each equation true?
Materials getting ready.
So
and
the
stuff. You're doing the same
and
unit, right?
these are advancing questions, right? Which we learned about.
I feel like that's half. I didn't really wrap up my. So we have to guess how big this is.
Okay, we're going to continue. I just want to make a quick announcement. If we had a couple of questions about, if this product was chosen to be adopted, would we be ordering the student workbooks? Would we be ordering blah, 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 blah? Yes, we would order TEs for you in print so that you could have them in print and then you could also access them online. We would also recommend that we are ordering the course guide for you because this is great to bring to your PLC, right? So that you can be looking up, okay, this is the purpose of the lesson. Our scope and sequence is in here, right? The language routines are in here already. So this would be something that would accompany your TE if this product was selected. For workbooks, we would only think about one-to-one workbooks for our youngest learners, K2, and then for our older learners, 3rd through 8th grade, and then into Algebra 1, you would have 3 to 5 to use in your classroom that you could utilize. You could also copy those for instructional use if needed, and your resource teachers could access those as well. So older grades would not get a one-to-one workbook. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay.
And for the older grades, if I were to build off of that, I did not have a one-to-one workbook when I used it, and I had binders, and we organized it by the warm-up, the lesson, and the notes and the vocabulary. And once they get in that routine, they had the workbooks in front of them to visualize it, but they put it all into their binders. That's how I organized it, and it worked great because I was not given the access to have one-to-one every year, and we couldn't write in them. So that's how we went around it. In here, you guys just explored this a little bit, but it does have access for students with disabilities right under the access for English learners, and it gives students, it says what it provides accessibility for, so visual spatial processing, conceptual processing, and then it gives suggestions on how to accommodate that or modify. Okay. So within each of these, it will have access for students with disabilities, and it will talk about what it is addressing and the supports it's provided. So conceptual processing, language, visual spatial processing, organization, memory, attention, social emotional functioning, and fine motor skills. So you'll see that within the teacher's edition and the online portion. Under each activity that you're at, it'll have those supports within it embedded. I think it's a picture of it. Nope. So I'll go back one more. Again, under each activity, under the lesson, the activity narrative, it'll have it right underneath there. Okay. So that was the lesson level design structure and some routines and supports that are embedded in it. So we have the warm-up, the synthesis, the activity, the the activity synthesis, lesson synthesis, and then the cool down. K through 8, that is the same exact structure. Algebra 1 is different. We went over it. So now we're going to get into instructional routines, not just the math language routines and the activities and what we see with those. Okay. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Okay, so in each activity, so we just did what the lesson goes through. In each activity, you have a launch, so it tells you how to launch it, or like the hook to your students. It has the work time, and then it has the synthesis. And then within this work time has instructional routines that we're gonna go over. And the instructional routines help with, this is what we used to teach was the I do, so teachers provide direct instruction. The we do, students engage in learning with guidance and support. And then the you do, students practice independently. What Open Up Resources gears towards, it is a problem-based curriculum, and it really wants to create critical thinkers and problem solvers and provide supports, like just-in-time supports, instead of doing the I do, we do, you do. It is mostly you launch it. The students have independent time to work on it or partner time. It'll tell you in the course guide. And then you come back together and we do the we do. So students work in pairs, groups to share their ideas. And then you facilitate a discussion to make the connections and clarify any problems or misconceptions that were happening within the practice. So it's a shift in being the facilitator of learning or the giver of information to facilitating the learning within your classroom. It's like a shift in the mindset. So here is from 3rd grade. This is the activity launch. So you would portray this to your students, or they would see it in their workbooks. And then you would kind of go over what do you notice, what do you wonder about this. And then the students then would be given the prompt and then the questions down there, and that would be the part that they would do independent. And it's based upon your students. You might have to put some scaffolds in if you notice that, but typically it's like 4 to 5 minutes independent time. And then you go to the we do part where they work within their groups on this problem. And then you go to the synthesis where you pull it all together for the students. Okay. Within, I think it's the K-5, this is not in the 6-8, it has supports to advance student thinking, and it has a teacher reflection within your course guide, I believe. And then in the 6-8, it looks a little different. It has anticipated misconceptions and questions you can ask your students. And then online, it has a lesson reflection. Yes. And the anticipated misconceptions part was great in our PLCs to talk about that, and then for us to preemptively think, okay, we know this is going to be a misconception. What can we do in our launch to address it before it becomes one? And they name a lot of them. There are some that probably aren't there that is just relevant to your students that you'll come up with on your own, but at least this gives a base of here's stuff that your students could anticipate or have misconceptions about. In each of these lesson activities. There'll be applets. The applets are all accessible. I think most of them are on GeoGebra, and then there's some that are just applets that the students can view if you click a link. And they don't need a login or anything. They can just click the link that's provided and it'll bring them there. Again, this was for scaled copies in 7th grade, and it was going over what's a scaled copy and what is not. Okay, now we'll go into the instructional routines. So the instructional routines help with the students when they're doing the you do and we do part first. So it invites all students to the learning. It elicits student discussions around the mathematical goal of the lesson. It provides a structured but adaptable format and are intentionally selected. They amplify, assess, and develop students' language. So again, these are different than the math language routines, which are there to help support the academic vocabulary and language within the units. These are instructional routines that the teachers, like ourselves, would use in our day-to-day instruction. Here are the K-5 instructional routines. And then we'll get into the 6-8 because they're a little different. So the K-5 have acted out, choral count, and these are all found in your warm-ups. Estimation, exploration, how many do you see? That's that dot one I showed earlier. Notice and wonder, a number talk, questions about us, true or false, what do you know about blank, and which one doesn't belong, which is my personal favorite. And then those are the math language routines, which we already went over. These are also found in the course guide that you were given. It's also on the online platform that was there. And then if this is in your warm-up activity, in the teacher's edition, it'll show you it, and then it will kind of explain how to do it in your launch. Any questions on the instructional routines for K-5? There are additional supports. So I'm a community coach for Open Up. So once a month we have a 1-hour PLC and we go over instructional routines, and it's free for everybody to go to. It's a Zoom link, and we have a K-5 community coach as well. And she goes over once a month. They're on our website. Not professional development, but it's just like an hour-long PLC, essentially, like what this looks like, how you can implement it in your class, and if you have questions. And they have one for K-5, 6-8, and they have a high school community coach as well who does them. Here are the 6-8 instructional routines. So you'll see algebra talk, which comes up more in the 7th and 8th grade curriculum than the 6th, because 6th grade's the first year for it. Anticipate, monitor, select, sequence, connect. That's also called the 5 practices, if anyone has used that before or researched it. There's group presentations, notice and wonder, number talk, pull the class, take turns, which is just another term for a card sort, think, pair, share, true or false, and then which one doesn't belong. So those are the instructional routines for 6-8. And again, we do monthly PLCs where we go over, we'll do like 1 or 2 in them, and we'll go over how to use them and implement them. But it is also on the course guide. So if you wanted in your course guide online that we looked at earlier, if you were like, I don't know what true or false is, you can go to your course guide and then go scroll down. So it's about these materials, and scroll down till you see true or false, and it'll show where it typically shows up and what it is and how to implement it. Any questions on those instructional routines? Okay. We'll move into the assessments portion of this because there's different assessments for different grade levels. Here are, it's kind of like an overview. So in 1st through 5th grade, they have pre-unit practice problems, which are within each unit online that you can go to the unit downloads. And then in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they have a pre-unit diagnostic assessment. If you're on the overview, you just click that and you see assessments, and it'll bring you to the pre-unit diagnostic. So this doesn't show you if your students have mastered that standard or that skill. It's just seeing if they are ready to access that material for that unit in 6th, 7th, and 8th. So you can use that data however you see fit for your class, for like small group reteach or enrichment, however you see fit for that. There's the practice problems. They're in K through 8 and cool downs or exit tickets. Yes. So the pre-unit diagnostic, if you go to whatever unit that you're on, unit 6 probably, if you go to that, I'll come over there and show you.
You may not have access to this because we had to get you access to the assessment.
That's fine.
It will take 24 hours, so make sure that you said, this is my email address and I am a teacher, right? So we sent all of your emails. They're verifying that you're a teacher, legit. And then tomorrow you should have access to the assessments.
And to double check and speed up the process, I sent you a link. Click on that link and fill it out again. She's looking for your emails.
When you do get access to it, this is what you'll see for, this is 6th grade unit 1, the pre-unit diagnostic. So in here, this problem 1 on the course guide, when you get access online, it'll show you what standards it's addressing from previous grade levels to see if your students are ready for the 6th grade standard. And then it tells you in here, most of the time, like if they got this problem wrong, here's something you can work on with them. And one other thing I loved about this was, not every time, but most times, it tells you what lesson or where it shows up within the unit. So during our PLCs, we would give this pre-unit diagnostic. We would look at all the data and we say like, oh, problem 2, our whole class got wrong in both of our classes. Where does it come up within the unit and how can we address that skill before we get to it? So that's how we use this at our school and in our PLCs. I personally loved the pre-unit diagnostics and it really helped me with scaffolding for all of my classes.
The end of unit assessments are not available for K-5?
They should be.
They are? Okay. Maybe just go back to your little chart.
Yes. Almost there. There we go. It should be there.
Okay, so they do have end of unit.
They just probably don't have what's called mid-unit assessments. They have checkpoints. Yes. And then to clarify, for 6th through 8th grade, not every single unit has a mid-unit assessment because some units are smaller than others. And if it does have a mid-unit assessment, it tells you what lesson to give it after. Okay. Here's how you access them. They'll be over to the right when you get access. And then it has the checkpoints in the end of unit in the K-5. And in here, it gives you solutions and then additional support if they get the problems wrong. And the standard it was addressing. The mid-unit assessments, it tells you exactly what lesson to give it after for 6 through 8 to assess all of that learning midway through the unit before you get into the second half of it. And then in K5, you have section checkpoints because you have different sections within a unit. And then every single grade level has cooldowns. Algebra 1, they're called exit slips. And then in the practice problems for K5, it has the pre-unit practice problems that they can do. And it'll say pre-unit next to it. It'll say practice problem, or it'll say exploration. And then I did this one. Any questions on the assessments? I know it's hard because you don't have access yet to them. No? Okay. In the 6-8 curriculum, it's normally like the last lesson in that unit. It's a performance task. So it's taking all of your learning for that and applying it to a real life problem. So I know this one, designing a tent, is for 6th grade, and it's the last lesson in it on area, surface area, and that was it. So it's applying it to a problem. In the K5, you have centers, and in those centers, there's 2 different types. There's addressing the standard centers, and there's supporting the standard centers. Yeah. So addressing centers address the work of a specific lesson or section. And then the supporting centers review prior unit or prior grade level understanding and fluencies. And it will specifically state that. Then I'll just get all of them up there. In K1, the centers are built into lessons. They're normally activity 2 or 3. In 2nd grade, you have a center of the day at the end of each section, or center a day at the end of each section. So at the end of the sections, you'll see them there. And then in grades 3 through 5, they will be in addition to regular class time or optional center day lessons to introduce new centers. So that's how you'll see them in the different grade levels. Mm-hmm. Yes, and it will say which type of center it is in the course guide.
And Nicole, you do not have centers for 6-8. Is that something that maybe you guys could be working on? I'll put that request in.
In the feedback button on the bottom, okay. You could put that on the website. There's a feedback button. You could put that there. Yeah. Not to my knowledge that. Okay. The centers are under resources. Then you can go down and it'll say centers there. So this is for, I think, 3rd grade unit 1. Yes. And then you click on centers. Any questions on how to access the centers? No. In the unit downloads, I think it'll have them there as well. Okay. The course guide, we've been accessing it this whole time, but this is something my first year using the curriculum I didn't utilize, and I wish I did because it had so much information in it. For each unit, you can go to resources. 6-8 looks a little different. It's like right up here at the top. You press course guide, and then it has the design principles of the curriculum, design principles of the lessons, pretty much any question you have about routines, lessons, how to use them, how to use the assessments, what are the learning goals, what are the student-facing goals. It has all that information in that course guide. I've never had the printed version. I've only ever used it online. You're getting the printed versions? Yeah. Any questions on the course guide or how to access it? Okay. Lastly, we have a huge community of people who use this resource for Open Up Resources, and I will tell you they are the most giving community. I'm part of the Facebook groups, and you'll say, I need a quick unit review. And someone will be like, oh, I have one, and then they share it on your response. So if you do have that, it is real-time support. We have the virtual professional learning community, the PLCs. I am a part of those ones for the 6-8. I do the 8th grade material. We have Tyler Turner who does the 7th grade material, and then Kira Bruce who does the 6th. And in there, we provide support to teachers across the U.S. And then oh, yeah. That makes sense. It is a Facebook link, and they have one for each specific grade level, and within there, they have all resources to help support. And they have a high school one, I do know. Okay. I don't know how to press play on this, but this is a teacher's perspective. Okay.
Before Open Up Resources, unfortunately, and I mean, not that I know I hear this sometimes, it's not the best thing to do, but just the way that math lended itself, I would be in front of the classroom, I would present the topic, I would introduce these strategies, and then give all that for my students to be able to go solve one problem. They didn't really get much time to explore. It was either an algorithm or it was in a strategy that I thought was the most efficient. And then they were then just go practice. It was I do, we do, you do. Now with this, obviously there's a huge shift. The anchor charts that are now up in my classroom are not ones that I created. They are not ones that I told students, this is the strategy you need to use. This is the most efficient way to get there, and this is the right way. That definitely has not come out of my mouth this year. So I'm proud of myself for that. But instead, with this curriculum, my classroom is filled with anchor charts that are student created. They were the ones who came up with the strategy. They are explaining their thinking, they're explaining their reasoning, and that's what's up in our classroom. And they also are able to use any materials that they want. I have a pretty little center set up in my room with all the different things that they can use, whether it's a 10 frame, cubes, chips, anything that they want to use. And some don't use it. Some are able to just get an expo marker, whiteboard, and let's go. But that's there for them to use, and they know they can get up whenever they want and go use it. So it's just them taking the lead, them doing the exploration and teaching each other and myself too. Sometimes some strategies, I'm like, whoo, that is a really good strategy. Yay, let's celebrate that. So it's all their work around my room.
Those are community coaches, and that was Myra. She teaches first grade, and she's our K-5 community coach. And then Yumia in the top right, I work with her. She is the 6, 8, and high school. She helps out with the high school community coaches as well. So she's in the monthly PLCs. That was just a teacher perspective of someone who started using it last year and how it impacted her teaching. We do have a conference in the summer for teachers. We have different pathways, different courses to go through. It's in Atlanta, Georgia. It's called Hive. I've been to it every year. It's amazing. Yes, there's only one. Last year we had 3. This year we have 1, July 10th through the 12th. Yeah. I did hear that I don't think I can say some pretty cool stuff that they're doing at Hive this year. So I'm excited for it. Okay. Any questions, thoughts, or wonderings before we go?
Any questions for Nicole before she leaves us? Let me just show you. Let me just talk to you about timeline. So I'm gonna probably have to pull my computer up while I look at this. So you know we like to be fast paced, right? We're starting tomorrow. Good job. And hold please while I use my foot to open up my computer. Let me give you the last timeline. May 9th? Is that when we meet again? Oh, good. We meet again, team, on May 9th. So that means that you have from tomorrow until May 9th for your 20 days of instructional piloting. Minus your time that you're spending testing. But y'all aren't testing for 3 weeks. Like, you test a couple days here and there, yes? And we still teach. Okay. That was just my soapbox. Okay. There was something else I wanted to tell you. If you have not filled out the survey for your first pilot, you're going to want to do that because you're going to forget. So, if you have your laptop here right now and you need to do it right now and get it over with, do that. If not, please, please, please fill that out because all of the data will come on May 9th and we will be making a final decision on May 9th. And then it's going to the governing board May 22nd. But you all won't be here, will you? You will be vacationing in Tahiti or something. Don't worry, I'll represent you. Oh, not Tahiti. Maybe the lake. Okay. I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 6:29. Thank you. Do not forget your materials if you're K2.